Ahead of a dinner in the Belgian capital, the Prime Minister will try to convince the EU 27 leaders to agree to move on to future trade discussions in a bid to offer more certainty to businesses concerned about the implications of Brexit. A senior government official said the Prime Minister will say that reaching the agreement on Phase 1 has required give and take on both sides, but a fair outcome has been achieved. Mrs May clinched a last-gasp Brexit agreement on Friday after a week of tense negotiations, which saw the Prime Minister backed into a corner as she tried to work out a deal agreeable to her. Westminster allies, the Irish government and EU chiefs, despite success agreeing a deal which meant sufficient progress had been made to allow Brexit talks to move on to the next phase. Mrs May received no respite from political infighting in Westminster, as the government suffered its first defeat over the EU withdrawal bill. Tory rebels and opposition MPs backed an amendment giving them a legal guarantee of a vote on the final Brexit deal as Conservative Party divisions widened even further. The Prime Minister must now turn her attention to Brussels and try to convince the EU to begin talks next month on a roughly two-year transition period to ease Britain out after March 2019. Donald Tusk, the European Council President, has said this morning that the second phase of Brexit talks will be the real test of the EU's unity. Scroll down for live updates from the EU summit in Brussels. European Commission Donald Tusk has warned the second phase of Brexit talks will test the unity of the EU. 2:20 p.m. Mark Rutte says it's crunch time. For May, Britain needs to make up its mind and decide what results it wants to achieve from the next phase of Brexit talks, according to the Dutch PM, Mark Rutte. Read more from express.co.uk. Aurora Bozotti here. 2:10 p.m. Irish leader Arrivas Leo Varadkar has spoken to reporters about the deal agreed with Theresa May last week and what that means for the Irish border. He said, "I will stick to what was agreed last week, which was the word maintain. That means keep the same alignment to the rules of the internal market and the customs union. That's the line that was used in the document. I have no need to interpret it." Speaking to Sky News' Faisal Islam, he said last night's comments defeat for Mrs May does not affect his view on her ability to deliver Brexit. Mr Varadkar added, "I have absolutely confidence and trust in the British government." 1:50 p.m. Merkel and Macron mention migration. Both the French president and the German chancellor have made brief comments about migration, one of the key issues set to be discussed at the summit. Macron said, "We know solidarity is needed at the internal level, but also we need to move forward on a common asylum law, on a common external border policy, and in particular in common policy towards sensitive world areas." Shortly afterwards, Merkel added, "We need solidarity on both the external and internal dimensions of migration. Selective solidarity cannot work." Could this be a sly dig at Donald Tusk's remarks about ineffective migrant quotas? 1:45 p.m. Outgoing Austrian Chancellor admits hopes Brexit can be reversed. Christian Kern, who will shortly step down from his position to allow Sebastian Kurz to take the reins, admitted he hopes Brexit can be reversed. He said, "I hope that it could be reversed because there will be a lot of big issues, challenges that are not easy to solve, and there will be a lot of tensions in the domestic political area in Great Britain, so who knows. Now it's very important to go to the next phase, because if we don't do that, this would have huge confusions on the capital markets, on the whole European political scenery." 1:30 p.m. This is not just a summit about Brexit, says Macron on arrival. The EU's golden boy told reporters there's no need for a collective EU response to Trump's Jerusalem decision after he vowed France would not join the US in recognizing the city as the new Israeli capital. He said there is more to this summit than Brexit because a lot of things were announced already. EBS Live. Emmanuel Macron speaks to reporters ahead of the European Council summit. 1:20 p.m. Dutch PM backs formidable May. Mark Rutte, the Prime Minister of the Netherlands, has backed Theresa May to deliver Brexit for Britain. Asked if Mrs May still has what it takes after last night's Commons defeat, he said, "Yes, I think so, because I believe in UK society and in political circles there's widespread support for a reasonable negotiated exit. Friday showed all of us we should not underestimate May. She's a formidable politician. I guess she's holding her cards close to her heart at the moment. This is probably a wise negotiating tactic. It's now for the UK to make up its mind and together collectively to see where we can get to. 1 p.m. Lithuanian president plays down importance of Commons vote. Bad news for the Tory rebels who backed last night's amendment to the EU withdrawal bill. Asked if the Commons vote changes anything, Lithuanian President Dalia Grybauskaitė said, "I don't think so, we're on the same track." As it was agreed by both sides. 12:40 p.m. Tusk's migrant quota comments slammed by Greek opposition leader Konstantinos Mitsotakis. The leader of Greek opposition party New Democracy has hit out at Donald Tusk after the European Council president said refugee quotas were ineffective. Arriving at the EP meeting, Mitsotakis said, "President Tusk's statement regarding mandatory quotas is wrong. It is wrong not only because the existing relocation scheme, albeit on a small scale, has worked. It is also wrong because our union has been based on the fundamental principle of solidarity, and the only way to express that solidarity in practice is fair and proportional burden sharing." 12:25 p.m. Luxembourg PM drops Brexit bombshell. Wow. Luxembourg's Prime Minister has just revealed some shocking news about the EU's views on the UK Parliament's meaningful vote on the Brexit deal. Xavier Bettel has said that if the Brexit deal accepted by the British government gets rejected by Parliament, the EU will refuse to renegotiate. He said, "I really believe that. To think that Theresa May will negotiate something, we will negotiate something, and then again Theresa May will go back to Westminster, is not good for the position of the negotiations. Westminster should trust that May will do the best for the UK. Does this mean the British Parliament could stop Britain from leaving the EU?" 12:15 p.m. Angela Merkel arrives. Angela Merkel has arrived at the European People's Party EP summit in Brussels as she briefly escapes the domestic chaos prompted by her party's inability to form a coalition government in Germany. Sporting a yellow blazer, the German Chancellor looked a bit glum as she arrived ahead of tonight's European Council summit. Twittergram Chancellor Angela Merkel arrives in Brussels. 12:10 p.m. Robert Fico backs Tusk's remarks about ineffective migrant quotas after Donald Tusk came under fire for suggesting the EU's migrant quotas were ineffective. Slovakian leader Robert Fico has backed the European Council president's comments and said, "We reject the idea of quotas. They are ineffective. This idea of borders has really divided the EU. 35 million euros is a lot of money, but if it is necessary, we are willing to continue." Earlier today, Slovakia, along with Poland, Hungary and the Czech Republic, promised to support Italy's bid to secure Europe's external border to prevent another migrant crisis. 12:05 p.m. Luxembourg calls for trust in Brexit talks. Luxembourg's PM Xavier Bettel has said talks between the EU and the UK should be based on trust. Ahead of an ALDE party meeting, he told reporters, "I believe that May will negotiate something, we will negotiate something, we will agree on something, and then again Theresa May will come back to Westminster. We should not punish the British citizens because they have decided to leave, but we should not punish the other countries too because one is leaving." Meanwhile, a former Luxembourg PM, Jean-Claude Juncker, has arrived at the European People's Party summit. 12 p.m. Czech PM demands an end to migro mafia. Andrej Babis, the newly elected leader of the Czech Republic, has called on his European counterparts to make new efforts to tackle the human traffickers bringing people to Europe. He said, "We have to solve this problem by fighting against this migro mafia that is making billions of euros and is bringing these unhappy people to Europe by promising them a better future, which isn't going to happen." 11:50 a.m. Jean-Claude Juncker welcomes V4 commitment to securing Europe's borders. Standing next to Hungarian PM Viktor Orban, President Juncker praised the Visegrad Group's offer of financial support to the Romuald project in Libya. Referring to the V4, Juncker said, "Sometimes it seems that there are misunderstandings and we don't know what each other is thinking. Today I'm happy that there are first results. This is the proof that the Visegrad 4 countries are well aligned when it comes to solidarity with Italy and so on. So for once I am a happy man today." EBS Live. Hungarian PM Viktor Orban and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. 11:45 a.m. There's no human right to enter Europe. Slovakian PM Robert Fico has told reporters, when asked about the arrival of refugees from Libya, that there is no human right to go to the European Union. quite a defensive stance given his discussions with other members of the Visegrad in Juncker. 11:30 a.m. Donald Tusk arrives. Donald Tusk, the president of the European Council, has spoken to reporters as he arrived at the EU summit. Speaking about the Brexit deal and defence cooperation, he said, "Both these achievements demanded courage, realism, but above all our unity." He said that on Eurozone reform, the divide is, and sorry for this geographical simplification, between North and South, while on migration policy, this division is between East and West. He then tweeted, "Decisions on European defence pesco Brexit show that only united can we perform the most difficult tasks. Divisions on migration and EMU are accompanied by emotions which make it hard to find common ground. We should work even more intensively to keep our unity." 11:20 a.m. Visegrad Group commit funds to EU border protection. Poland, Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic have issued a statement confirming their commitment to the Italian-led project, aimed at protecting the borders in Libya, and will together offer £30.8 million, €35 million to the plan. The statement reads, "The financial effort and the readiness in the implementation of the project is another demonstration of the V4 of their conviction that the migratory pressure on Europe can only be efficiently tackled by ensuring the protection of external borders, while addressing the root causes." 11:10 a.m. Grenfell Tower Memorial. Before Mrs. May heads to Brussels, she is due to attend a memorial service for the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire. About 1,500 people are due to attend the service at St. Paul's Cathedral, including Princes William and Harry, the Duchess of Cambridge, Prince Charles, the Archbishop of Canterbury and Jeremy Corbyn. The service is being held to give thanks to everyone who assisted on the ground at the time of the tragedy and since it, including the emergency services, the recovery team, the community, public support workers and volunteers. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and Prince Harry pay their respects to the Grenfell fire victims. 11 a.m. Verhofstadt already causing trouble. Guy Verhofstadt, the leader of the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats for Europe Group ALDE, has tweeted this morning to condemn the alleged bias coverage of anti-government protests in Poland, which was broadcasted by a TV channel owned by Jaroslaw Kaczynski, who leads the ruling party. Mr. Verhofstadt, an outspoken Brexit critic, wrote on Twitter, "It looks like Kaczynski is afraid of the free press. He prefers to control the state media rather than allowing an open debate. Very worrisome that he is following the example of Putin." Hungarian PM Orban. Poland deserves better. Will Poland react? 10:50 a.m. David Davis in the Clearback in Westminster. Speaker John Bercow has told MPs he has judged that there was no contempt of Parliament after David Davis was accused of misleading the House of Commons over the status of Brexit impact reports. Mr. Bercow said the government could have been considerably clearer about the state of the reports. The evidence before him meant he did not believe the allegations of contempt would be pursued further. The allegations emerged in response to a parliamentary motion which pushed the government to release its analysis on 58 sectors of the economy to the Exiting the EU Select Committee. AFP. David Davis has been cleared of contempt of Parliament over Brexit impact reports. 10:40 a.m. Will Trump's Jerusalem decision come up? President Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as the new Israeli capital last week prompted strong criticism from across the world as the U.S. leader threatened to unravel years of work to establish peace in the Middle East. The announcement prompted a return to violence in the region as Israeli troops reacted to Palestinian protests. Although EU Representative Federica Mogherini spoke of EU unity against Trump's decision and leaders including Macron and May have publicly condemned the move, it remains unclear whether EU leaders will make a formal statement on the subject today. While the bloc often responds collectively to global outrages, such as North Korean missile launches, some EU members believe these issues should be dealt with on a national level. 10:25 a.m. Whining about wine. Meanwhile in Westminster, Brexit Secretary David Davis is taking questions from MPs in the Commons. Sir Edward Lee, the Conservative MP for Gainsborough, wants to know whether Britain will receive a share of the 42,000 bottles of wine in the EU's cellar when it quits the bloc. Brexit Minister Robin Walker says last week's deal sets out how EU assets will be shared. For more from Westminster, take a look at my colleague Mark Chandler's story. Here, 10:15 a.m. Juncker speaks to EU rebels on migration issues. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker is set to meet with the leaders of Visegrad Group 5 to try to work out a solution to the ongoing dispute surrounding migrant quotas. The V4, comprised of Poland, Hungary, Slovakia and the Czech Republic, have shunned EU attempts to get them to accept a mandatory refugee quota. The group is expected to use today's meeting, which will also be attended by Italy PM Paolo Gentiloni, to show the V4 is prepared to make a contribution to Rome's work in Libya by helping to boost border security. Brussels has threatened to sue Poland, Hungary and the Czech Republic over their refusal to accept migrant quotas. If Merkel's domestic woes have allowed Macron to take more control in Europe, 10 a.m. who holds the power in Brussels? The EU summit comes at a particularly interesting time given the shifting power balance in Europe. Angela Merkel, the German chancellor who has enjoyed almost unfettered dominance over the EU in recent years, has so far failed to form a coalition at home and is therefore heading to Brussels on the back foot. France appears to have usurped Germany as the EU's main powerhouse, at least for the time being, and Emmanuel Macron arrives in Brussels in the knowledge that he can set the agenda for EU talks. Ireland, meanwhile, has already been affected by Brexit talks after Theresa May, Irish Taoiseach Leo Varadkar and Northern Ireland's DUP leader Arlene Foster finally broke the Irish border deadlock. Mr. Varadkar knows Ireland will be one of the member states most affected by Brexit and other EU countries are aware. Dublin must be satisfied with the outcome of the summit for Brexit to move forward amid fears the delicate balance of peace could be threatened. 9:50 a.m. morning. Welcome to today's live coverage of all the events from the EU summit in Brussels. Theresa May is heading to the Belgian capital to meet with her EU counterparts after suffering a shocking defeat in the Commons last night. She'll be hoping to put the loss behind her as she tries to convince leaders from across Europe to move on to the second phase of Brexit talks. Other topics likely to crop up during the two-day summit include Eurozone reform, migration and defense cooperation as EU leaders come together for the last time this year.